competitive people situations or slash situations make you nuts. Now, I believe you. How does that manifest on a comedy writing staff? Because that seems like SNL, especially competitive.
SNL is usually a lot of nice people thrown together who have somewhat of large egos because they've been the funniest person in their group. And now they're all thrown together. And it has this inherent contradiction that it's supposed to be collaborative and nurturing on the one hand, but everybody's pitted against each other on the other hand. And that was a place where there were people that that kind of defined themselves through how they responded to that environment.
Define themselves in a way of like I'm great because I won.
Respect or not because they're supportive or they're competitive. Like there's a writer who told me this was not in my era. Like when I was there in the late 80s and early 90s.
You were always kind of there though.
Well, no, then I left and I came back and did cartoons for 11 years, which was
your famous sketches are the Bears.
The Bears.
There's way too many to list. I mean,
they really
how
are.
long do you have?
I've got all the time in the world.
Okay. Carcinio and all the Carsons and the...
You just do this, you go whoop, whoop, whoop. And they go crazy. It's just wild, weird stuff.
Yes!
Oh my God. Not gonna phone it in tonight.
Not gonna phone it in.
When Steve Martin sang that song and Steve Martin's Holiday Wish, the Christmas Wish, and the Reagan is the mastermind, and I just feel like an asshole.
Fuck. You wrote Reagan is the mastermind?
Well, it was nice meeting you. Come on, Lisa. Come on. Bye-bye.
Back to work!
Well, it was my idea. And
that's all.
When I say I wrote,
I know what you mean.
know how that is.
Yeah.
People helped you.
Yeah.
Jim Downey.
But the 80% of the premise is 80%.
The operative joke is always
incredible,
super important.
Yeah.
But, I'll Cluckin' Chicken is my favorite. Probably that was a mascot. I love mascots, as you can see.
Yeah.
It was a chicken who represented a fast food chain who's always got a big smile on his face. And Phil Hartman asked, why is your chicken so chickalicious or whatever? And then he explains, it's because I'm flame broiled. And then he takes you through the whole process, starting with his head being chopped off.
Then I'm plucked and gutted. My intestines are pulled out. Trust me, you don't want them.
What I remember about that sketch is when the audience realizes what's happening.
Yeah.
The laughs are like, oh, and then they're like kind of thrilled by it.
Yes.
Because it's so fucking
very satisfying.
Brutal.
Hear that sizzle? That's me. 550 degrees. Good thing I'm dead or yeah-wee.
Yeah, but satisfying because like nobody thought to write about it or say it, but it was always insane that there were mascots for fast food places that were the thing that's being eaten.
They were the
Has
victim,
a giant smile on his face, reassuring, yep, plucked and gutted and ready to go.
Yep, at your service.
Yes.
So I would say you were very dominant. I mean, whatever. You don't like you don't use words like that. Fine.
I mean, other people use that about people who are doing well.
Well, I don't say it as a negative way. It's I know. You're so good at sketches. And I say that as somebody who knows about sketches, I once thought of a sketch thinking about what you would do. I swear to God. Like I thought of it was like, what would Smigel and whatever. So I
had my own heroes at the show.
Who were your heroes?
Well, Jack Handy to me is in a class by himself.
Yeah, he's in the top.
Because I was really good and I wrote a lot of things, but I would say a fair amount of them, somebody else potentially could have come up with, in my opinion. Whereas Jack Handy, he had so many ideas that you just can't imagine anyone else in the world.
You don't even know how he got there.
Exactly.
As a comedy writer, you're like, how the fuck did you get there?
Yeah.
Even his New Yorker pieces, which should be boring, are still like, wow.
His originality really stands out. And then Jim Downey's just as skilled and as funny as anybody I've ever met.
Yeah.
So those guys especially,
they'd be on my list as well. Okay, so but competitive people make you nuts, and that's sort of a way.
That's a place where so what I was going to say was I remember seeing an interview with a writer from like a later era, literally saying that at the table read that he would actively clam up when other sketches that weren't his, that he didn't want to see do well. Like he would hold back laughter. And I don't remember that in my era.
Yeah.
My cast, what I liked about my group was like Harvey and Nealon and Hartman and Jan Hooks and Nora and Victoria and Dana Carvey. I mentioned him, right?
Mike Myers.
Mike joined later, but they would like openly bicker with each other, but they would never do that. They would never hold back at read through. If somebody was funny, people gave it up. And, because that's like a whole other level of competitive that is just.
Well, that's like sabotage.
Yeah. It's like everybody in that era really wanted the show to be good.
Does it flare up in you?
What?
Competitiveness, not like wanting to clam up, but like.
I mean, I'm human. I want to do well and stuff, but I check out when I sense, if I've had friendships that I've put on hold when I felt like I was having a certain level of success and a friend was
not enjoying it.
Clearly in some way not enjoying it. Yeah, that really knocked me out.
Did you, you seem time. Pretty, are you generally humble? Like, meaning, not humble, I mean like, but like.
I don't want to say I'm the most humble guy in the world.
But you do seem like a pretty, like, you enjoy comedy. Like you really like comedy. That's the thing. Yeah. Like it's joyous for you
Saturday
to do.
Night Live. Yeah. I think I was maybe the first fanboy ever hired like a person who grew up like watching the show in the mid 70s, like from the original. And I was hired like 10 years after the show was on. And I don't know that they'd ever hired a writer like that before, who had really like in his teenage years worshipped the show. Like I was growing up in New York City too.
Yeah.
So it was everything that the rest of the country felt was elevated. Cause like what that show did for New York City on top of everything else. I grew up living in Manhattan, and I loved, as a child, I just loved growing up in Manhattan. And it was different then. It was a little more of it wasn't as homogenous with rich people.
It was also like gross and dangerous.
Yeah, it was gross and dangerous. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I look at Taxi Driver is like my favorite movie anyway.
Yeah.
All the animals come out at night.
But when I just get to look at movies from the 70s that were filmed in New York, I get so nostalgic for that.
This is a side note. Era. I was told Schrader wrote Taxi Driver about LA.
What? I could see that.
Somebody explained it to me.
I could see that.
It's all separated by car windows.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's all, none of that's LA. That's right. That's what it was explained to me.
Wow. But yeah, so when Lorne Michaels went with, and Johnny Carson had left New York right around the mid 70s for Burbank. So I, in my head, had this hatred for Los Angeles. Like I was already like locked in, a TV nerd, you know. Kids used to do an impression of me answering the phone. Hi, I'm having dinner at ba-da-da-da-da. Because I had a weird family. My dad worked really late hours and we would eat dinner really late. But so I was like heartbroken when he moved to LA, and my dad was a New York Giants baseball fan and he was heartbroken. He would talk about how the Dodgers and Giants moved to the West Coast. So anyway, so here's a show that's bringing, and this is when Abe Beame, the mayor of New York, there was a financial collapse, and then Gerald Ford, the president, denied funding.
And there was a headline,
New York dropped dead. This is like the lowest point in the city probably since the Depression. No kidding. And this show comes on, and what it did it excited me for just being such a cool new type of comedy on television, but what it did for New York too, just starting with Chevy Chase saying live from New York.
Live from New York.
A montage glamorizing New York and highlighting the punk scene and all this cool stuff that was just emerging at the time. I mean, it's just an incredible contribution. And I like someday I hope they name the street after Lorne Michaels, because I don't know anybody who did more for New York City and the entertainment industry.
I hope someday they make a documentary about it. About Saturday Night Live, finally. And make a feature film. I hope someday
it
gets some kind of coverage.
I always say the show's been examined more than World War II. Like
you're
could name more writers from SNL than generals.
You're absolutely right.
And there's like going to be like 6 documentaries coming out this year.
Yeah,
like, I'm not
and a feature. And the full feature.
And the Jason Reitman feature. Yes.
God bless. All right. Well, you're not competitive, and I don't know you well at all. But
I was raised like in a hippy dippy era, so I went to a camp that was like aggressively not competitive.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of raised that way to like not be that way, not even so much by my parents as much as just the environment around me. Like there were hippies marching outside protesting Vietnam when I was a kid, and I just looked up to them. And then I went to this progressive camp, and so I had all that ingrained in me, and so I really recoiled from and comedians. I started out trying to do stand-up, but I wasn't as comfortable in that environment because it felt competitive. So
well, that's what I was going to say.
Okay,
because I've heard you. I mean, not heard you. I've spoken to you about friends of yours that your contemporary Conan, Sandler, Chris Rock, and you talk about them. I one time asked you if you were proud of Conan. You were like, you almost like teared up. And what I'm saying, I guess my question is there, sometimes I worry, like, is there something to be said for arrogance? Something to be said for like, you will play support. I generally have played support a lot. Like I'm happy to support people.
I mean,
because I believe in like fairness and like this motherfucker's so funny. I'll support them.
I never have a problem with people getting successful who are amazing.
Yeah,
that's what I'm rooting for all the time. And
do you ever think like you wish you had a bigger ego or something?
I think I have a pretty big ego, but I just feel like there's just too much other shit to care about than that. And I understand everything that's happened to me that's led me to where I am, and I'm perfectly fine with where I am. I have regrets at things. I mean, when you talk about arrogance, I don't know if it's arrogance or maybe aggressiveness. Like there might have been things I could have done when I was younger that focused more on getting from point A to point B. Like I never got a manager.
Mm-hmm.
I never, and I hired an agent based on the fact that I thought he was a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
When I had other friends who were hiring like, oh, this guy's a shark. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want that in my life. I just don't want to talk to a person like that every day of my life.
Yeah.
And I might have been it sounds like high-minded, moral, but I think it was a little bit of judgmental in my own mind. Like, I'm just too good for this. I do. I think, that's something that I always struggle with. Like, am I being moral? Like, is it performative?
Yeah.
Is it performative on some level? And I don't really think it is, but ultimately, that was my gut at the time. I don't want to talk to that guy every day of my life.
Hey, did you like that? Did you like that? Yeah, did you like it though? You want more? Don't want to work? Would rather watch videos of me grab-assing with people? First of all, go up here to subscribe, and then go up here to watch more clips. This is like when the weatherman says that there's a high pressure system coming in. I'm not really used to the green screen.